Friends and patriots, welcome and good evening to you. My name is Ajuri Ngelale, and I come to you from the nation's capital. This is Eagle Eye. On this edition of the program, we take you all access into President Muhammadu Buhari's landmark effort to remediate the extensive damage done to oil-producing communities over the past several decades, beginning in the 4 oil-rich local government areas of Ogoniland in Rivers State. With many associated issues on the front burner, and with many questions yet to be answered, we seek first-hand information on an extensive venture to the region with the Honorable Minister of Environment, Barrister Mohammed Abdullahi, on this edition of Eagle Eye. Without further ado, let's head to one of the mineral wealthiest areas in the country, which happens to be my home, Ogoniland. This is an image worth 1,000 words. It is to this land that the newly appointed Minister of Environment comes from Abuja. Seeking first-hand information, Ogoniland is the only focus of the agenda. Welcomed by the project coordinator of High Prep, Dr. Ferdinand Giedom. The minister first receives brief at High Prep headquarters.
For areas that were situated in the shorelines, we started just at the complex sites. Well, yes, you can call it semi-complex. Okay, semi-complex, yes. We have started the assessment, and by our program, by the second week of May, like about 2 weeks time, we now start to identify some sites where we can start with the mangrove rehabilitation.
And to report back to Mr. President. Mr. President is desirous of ensuring that he leaves a very lasting legacy of, solution, to the pollution crisis in Ogoniland.
Before field visits, the minister heads to Thai local government to offer first courtesy to the President of the Supreme Council of Ogoni Traditional Rulers, King GNK Gininwa.
Thank you, Highness.
All protocol duly observed. Honorable Minister, sir.
Between the President and myself, Mr. President is my personal friend. And what brought us together is this High Prep team. And I'm happy that you have to tell him that I'm thanking him because he's implementing it. Now that you are here, the thing is going well. Honorable Minister, I want to make a very special appeal. There are times in life that God tries to help a group of people. This time is your Ogoni time. Your coordinator is ready to listen to your advice. He's a boy that since he came into power for the past 2-3 months, there had been a complete change. The changes is that High Prep is now closer to the people than it was before.
The minister shares the president's new plan for Ogoniland.
So the federal government is suspending the objectives and the project mandate of IPREP to ensure that this entire Ogoniland is linked with the national grid. So these power projects will power the water projects around Ogoniland. They will provide small-scale industries opportunities for power so that we can encourage cottage industries to flourish and then ultimately employ our younger people.
Farewell to the king gives way to the commencement of field inspection. The project coordinator walks us through the polluted lands remediation process.
What we are seeing here is a contaminated site that is being worked upon. What happens is that we delineate the boundaries of the contamination, know the utmost limits, and then the depth. Then after we've done that, we determine the volume of contaminated soils. Then we send in excavators that will excavate the soils, take out the soils that are contaminated with petroleum hydrocarbons, and then take them to the biocells on the other side where we have seen. In the biocell is engineered in such a way that it keeps the contaminated soil in place without contaminating the subsoils. And then bioremediation cocktails are now added to the soils that have been excavated from the contaminated site. At these points, with the addition of bioremediation cocktail, the breakdown of complex hydrocarbon molecules now take place. Now, while that is going on, they are now removed, they are broken down into simple components of carbon dioxide and water. So it now makes the soils to be less toxic. We leave it in the biocell for a period, a duration of about 10 to 21 days, depending on the curing time. Then when we find out that it has cured, we collect samples from the biocell to the laboratory to test them to ensure that the contaminants have been reduced to regulatory limits. Usually, we move towards a target that is stated by regulations. When the soil is cured, we stockpile them, we take the next batch and treat and stockpile. When everything has been finished, as you can see, this entire site has been cleaned up. Then we now start to backfill. We backfill the soils based on the last one that came out. The last one that came out is the deepest soil. So we backfill them as they came out. So it is the first out, last in.
Out of the 65 sites assessed by the United Nations Environment Program in 2011 during the compilation of the UNEP report on oil pollution in Ogoniland, 21 of the 65 large sites comprising of Phase 1 were delineated into 50 smaller soil remediation lots by HIPREP in 2017 for restoration across all 4 local government areas of Ogoniland, leaving 44 major land and shoreline sites comprising 67.69% of all UNEP sites yet to be remediated. Of the 50 lots in Phase 1, 16 lots have completed remediation works with final certification by the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, NOSTRA. 26 lots have completed remediation works but await final resampling and certification from NOSTRA, while 8 remaining Phase 1 lots of the 50 remain yet uncompleted as of May 2022. From Tai, the minister heads to the lush green lands of Gokana.
Let me inform the High Coordinator and the Honorable Minister that we have a panel view. They are all here in our presence
For a meeting with local traditional rulers.
The 2 projects, the major projects that is going on in Gokana right now, passes through my own house. The road the president delivered on the road He's delivering on the road because he promised. I'm sure that this cleanup, he will deliver it. But it is the people who are going to be carrying out the orders of the president that will make it either successful or not.
Thank God, Mr. President has started by engaging the DC, who is Mr. Gokana from Ogoniland. So, like the Chinese will tell you, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
From Gokana, we arrive at the spiritual headquarters of Ogoniland in Bori town of Kana local government. Here, we enter into a closed-door session with the 4 local government chairmen of Ogoniland. With amicable resolution. It is time once again to go home to Eleme.
Ajuri Ngelale, the people of Eleme are happy for you. Able to conduct yourself to the point that the president of this great country was able to recognize you and appointed you as his own special assistant. Congratulations. Keep it up. Keep it up. We are indeed very, very proud of you. And God Almighty will see you through. Only our minister, you have said a lot. Leave behind on the sand footprint that we can always remember. Leave your footprint on the sands of time. You have come, you have seen. Minister, conquer for us.
Honorable Minister, we were together moving across River State with members of the management team of High Prep, looking at the status of High Prep projects as it relates to the cleanup of Ogoniland. Can you give Nigerians a sense of where we are as against the projections and goals set by President Muhammadu Buhari in terms of effectively mitigating the environmental disaster in Ogoniland?
The first step I took is to visit the area. I don't want to be an armchair executive that will rely on field briefings, that most times may not be accurate. So I feel there's a need to do an on-the-spot assessment myself so that I can visit the site physically. And I think it's a very great eye-opener. I was able to witness physically and practically the devastation to the ecosystem of the Ogoni people. So I can now, my thought, kind of resonate with the agitations, of the Ogoni people. It's very important that that visit have spurred me to take a number of decisions. Now, before the visit, the prior briefings I had indicate some lack of coordination in High Prep itself. And then there's also the growing agitation of lack of activities or lack of performance in terms of the actual remediation activities in Ogoniland. So the visit gave me the opportunity to engage with the stakeholders, discuss with High Prep operatives, and then also examine some of the concerns raised by parties that are involved in the entire exercise. So as it were, or as it is, to be honest and factual, we are far behind in terms of milestones, to be achieved towards these exercises. So with the remaining time available for this government, what we intend to do is focus basically more on complex sites remediation. Activities so far in the area just centered on simple sites and then probably water projects.
but the actual complex site where there has been a lot of damage to the land itself, where it has rendered the land uncultivatable and rendered the waters, the rivers and the mangroves just unusable for human activity. So we are trying to now focus on these areas. In the next 2-3 weeks, we should be able to see how we can invite bids, for companies that have shown expertise, or they have a level of degree of experience in such exercises of complex sites, even outside our shows. So our focus will now be on complex sites.
Honorable Minister, one of the consistent threads that we've seen under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari is that when it comes to interventions, particularly in the Niger Delta region, there has been a tendency, whether we talk about the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, or whether we talk about HIPREP, we find that a lot of the political appointees that have been given an opportunity to manage these critical institutions and to deliver on the president's objectives have not been able to deliver due to issues of corruption, issues of nepotism and favoring those in a procurement process that are not up to snuff. What would you tell Nigerians now about the difference you're bringing to bear? Of course, there's a new leadership team in HIPREP now with Dr. Ferdinand Giadom, but what difference are you bringing now to the table to say, look, we must deliver on Mr. President's vision because time is of the essence?
So what I did at the moment so that we can ensure that, because it was becoming also a humongous bureaucracy. So what we did now is to arrest that, stop that tendency towards having another bureaucracy within the Ogoni land. So we are reorganizing HIPREP. Before I came, there was a new appointment of the project coordinator. Now we're also dividing the, separating the office of project monitoring or operations and that of administration, so that they don't get mixed up. We want the project monitoring office or project office to focus more on delivery of the remediation exercise. That's a major focus. Then, of course, the admin can just focus on administration and staffing issues and consultancy issues, etc., so that we don't have a distraction. That is one. Then two, we have been able to, before I came, there was a bit of difficulty in terms of communication between the old trust fund board led by Wale Edun and the new trust fund led by Dr. Makar board. So what I did is to broker a meeting between them so that we can have a level of cooperation, because we have a lot of documents and information that are within the purview of the former board. So now that we've been able to broker that that piece, we've been able to get a lot of information that's guiding our next steps, including fund management, and then investment of the fund itself. So what we are trying to do differently is, one, to ensure that apart from the appointment of the PC, we also are withdrawing all procurement officers that are there. We have been directed by Mr. President and to liaise with BPP, that's Bureau for Public Procurement, to ensure that all the procurement officers that are there are withdrawn, so that we have fresh officers who are not attached to any faction within HIPREP itself. So these ones are going to be professional and have a target in delivering on the core objectives of HIPREP. And then two, we're also cooperating and partnering with UNEP to ensure that we ramp up capacity of HIPREP officers who are on the project supervision side, so that they can have capacity to actually visit site and question contractors and ensure that they are compliant in terms of the depth of the process itself in terms of remediation. Because I'm not too technical, but I understand that for a long time, because of the oil spillage, it has sifted down to the earth so deep that you need heavy equipment and heavy machines that can go deep down and begin to sift and tilt that corrupted or that corroded land out for possible exercise of remediation before they're being plugged back. So we need heavy equipment, heavy machinery, and very strong expertise. Now, if you don't have capacity at high prep level where they can supervise this to ensure their compliance, then we're not making any sense. Absolutely. So we are now liaising with UNEP to ensure that we do that capacity improvement of the technical team. And then again, we're also at the inception of the trust fund. To date, there has been no audit. So the president also directed that the Auditor General should audit the fund from date of inception to date, so that we know how much is actually contributed, by the fund contributors like Shell, these JV partners. So we want to know exactly how much has been contributed and how much has been expended by whom and where, so that we can now be able to have a dashboard view, of the state of things in terms of funding. Again, because of absence of what we call a secretary of the board, because by the Gazette, the fund is supposed to have a secretary to the board, that manages the fund for the purpose of record keeping. Now, to date, we don't have that. So the president, when I came, I discussed with him. He said, look, ensure that the Minister of Justice sent a lawyer of proven integrity to serve as secretary of the board, so that we can begin to have records of the activities of the trust fund itself. So we have taken a number of measures to ensure that it won't be business as usual.
Honorable Minister, one of the kind of consistent themes that came up during our engagements with stakeholders on the ground in Ogoniland was really that idea of how do we effectively balance the needs of the communities to be actively engaged in this process with the need to have global, really reputable organizations with, like you said, proven experience to conduct these very complicated, very technical operational procedures.
Now, part of also the other decision that we've taken with the support of Mr. President, you see, most sites that have this devastation are usually very large. And it goes, for instance, in the shoreline, it can take like 1, 2, 3 or more kilometers. So it's an area that requires mapping, depending on how long they are or the length and of the devastation. That can be a lot for a company that has expertise, that has the strong financial base to do that. But because we don't have that, for political exigencies, they now broke the lot into pieces to be able to accommodate some local players. But that is not in the spirit of the understanding UNEP and HYPREP has. So if you break it into pieces just to satisfy political exigencies, they might not be fair to the Ogoni people. So we've advised them this time around, in conjunction with UNEP, that look, sites that have such long devastation must be taken as it is and be given out to a competent contractor. We don't mind having a contractor outside the country that has shown expertise in such exercises in other countries. But we can invite them. They can partner with local players. The important thing is for them to deliver. Now, if there are subcontracts they can give to local players, so be it. But the important thing is that we must have a company that has a background of expertise and financial wherewithal, so that we can hold them accountable if they don't deliver. So that is, how we're approaching the cleanup.
Honorable Minister, when we look at the issue of, kind of technical wherewithal and know-how, and then, of course, bringing in the local players, as you've now mentioned, how do we ensure that potentially over the medium to long term, there's some sort of mechanism in place for potentially technology transfer and actively ensuring that whatever global players or foreign players come into this space to help us deal with the Ogoni cleanup, that future threats or future incidences can be effectively mitigated by our own, actors and players in the sector who may have learned from this current cleanup exercise.
So we're trying to take that model, look for experts from wherever they are, let them show us what they can do. But to assuage the concerns of the local people, we are going to have a component that will ensure that other activities that can be done locally, the local players must be given the opportunity to participate, because that is part of our local content policy. But this exercise of the complex site, believe me, is very, very technical. It requires a lot of expertise and equipment, and required funding to bring equipment from outside the country and then drop them in Ogoniland. So we understand the concerns. We will ensure that there are subcontractors aligned with the major contractors who are coming from outside the country in case that happens. But believe me, if a company in Nigeria shows expertise, why not? We'll be able to support that process. We'll support them to participate in the process. But they must show capacity. They must give guarantees. They must, show that they have equipment, and the financial wherewithal. We don't want a situation where you give a firm an assignment and they abandon the site and begin to look for funding, to finance their operations. So that takes away almost 6, 7, 8 months trying to get funding from banks. We don't want that. We want a company that will, from the word go, will start operations.
Share your thoughts and constructive comments with us on the Eagle Eye Facebook and Instagram page. As always, I have enjoyed this time with you, and I thank you for your viewership. I look forward to your company as I host you once again next week at this same time on this network. Until next time, may God Almighty go with you, and as eagles, may we all soar and lift our nation high as we do.